Hero of Cartao, Episode 2, Heroes Wise. Coming to a mid-air halt above the kilometer-wide grassy strip separating the Spaarti Creations manufacturing plant from the northern edge of the Manali family estate, the heavy cargo lifters began lowering their magnetic grapples. Kinman Doriana couldn't see the ground beneath them from his position. The estate's hills were blocking his view, but he could guess that they were hovering over the last of the shattered war machine that had ended up there in the aftermath of the Separatist assault on the planet 2 days earlier. At least, Doriana thought unkindly, the Nemodians commanding the accompanying void army had learned not to simply drive cleanup vehicles onto that forbidden stretch of grassland. Glancing around to make sure the copse of trees he was standing in weren't under observation, he pulled out his holo projector and keyed in the contact code. The connecting light blinked on as the device linked to the local Comlink central switching office, then to his personal ship and its special HoloNet node, then across the vast expanse of the Republic to one of the dozen HoloNet nodes on Coruscant, and finally to the private desk of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine himself. Doriana watched the lifters as he waited, wondering if Palpatine would be there or out at yet another meeting. The image of the most recognized face in the galaxy appeared in the air above the holo projector. Master Doriana, Palpatine said, nodding to his advisor. You have good news for me. Just the opposite, I'm afraid, Dorian admitted. The Separatists are still holding Spaarti Creations, and they seem to have finally figured out that vehicles or people on the planet's southern border upset the Kwanzaa trillers inside. They're clearing the last of the debris off the grassland now, and my guess is that by tonight they'll be able to get the plant retooled for whatever it is they want to build in there. Not a pleasant thought, Palpatine said gravely. Are you familiar with the D-90 project? No, Doriana said. Is it one of ours? Palpatine's lip twisted. Hardly. It's an experimental combat droid reputed to be as tough as the Trade Federation's D-60 assault droid, but more versatile. I see, Doriana said. The D-60 was a hulking man and a half-sized version of the super battle droids the Trade Federation had debuted at the Battle of Geonosis. How much more versatile? Considerably, Palpatine said. They'll be coordinated in small teams instead of entire army blocks so that they can be used as commando units, as well as simple battlefield shock troops. An unpleasant thought indeed, Doriana said. So the Separatists finally had a new weapon on the plotting board. About time. You think they'll come here to begin production? That's what our intelligence people believe, Palpatine said. Personally, I suspect there are still some system flaws and that they hope to use Spaarti to test and finalize the design. What's the current military situation? For the moment, basically stalemated, Doriana told him. Commander Roshton and his clone troopers have gone to ground, some of them here on Balinali's estate. The West dispersed elsewhere. They've been harassing the droids wherever possible, but the Separatists have mostly been staying inside where we can't get at them without risking damage to the plant, which neither we nor they want, Palpatine said. What about the techs? Banali has a secret safe room, basically a shielded sub-basement, that connects with the tunnels to the plant. Doriana said, the techs are hidden down there. Communications. The Separatists are still blocking the local comm center and the HoloNet node, Doriana told him. But Roshton's reconfigured their comm links somehow to get around it. They'll be able to move quickly if they get the chance. Then, they shall have it, Palpatine said. A Republic light cruiser is on its way with the necessary firepower to destroy the capital ship orbiting above you. Once the droid army is useless, I trust Commander Roshton won't have any trouble with the Nemodian overseers and their techs. I'm sure he won't, Doriana agreed. When can we expect the ship? Possibly as early as tonight, Palpatine said. Possibly not for another 3 days. It Depends on how much resistance they run into along the way. Understood, Doriana assured him. Thank you, Chancellor. We'll look forward to their arrival. Palpatine gave him a tired smile. The war, Doriana knew, was weighing heavily on him. Keep me informed. The image vanished. Doriana broke the connection from his end and looked back at the lifters. They had the blackened hole of the last ruined war machine in the air now and were towing it back toward the plant. Planning to dump it elsewhere on the extensive Spaarti grounds, no doubt. Why the alien Kwanzak insisted that this particular stretch of land, and only this particular stretch of land, be kept unsullied, not even Lord Benali himself knew. Doriana watched until the lifters and their burden had vanished behind the jutting roof of the Spaarti plant, then keyed a different code into his holo projector. He'd done his official job, reporting the situation to the man whose office paid him. Now it was time to do the same for the man who gave him his orders. As usual, it took longer for the holo projector to make this connection. Doriana cultivated his patience. Gazing idly at the skies, he wondered what the Nemodians were doing inside the plant. Now that the south lawn was clear, they would certainly try tonight to get the Kwanzak trillers to retool the plant. The only question was, what direction would that retooling take? To create the D-90 prototypes as Palpatine thought? Or were they up to something else? In the distance, he could hear the hum of propulsor lifts. And suddenly, 4 small transports appeared above the hills between him and the Spaarti creations. A squadron of staffs, flying defensive screening around them. Everything moving with the urgency of pilots who knew there were snipers in the area. The whole crowd shot past nearly overhead, then angled downward. The transports abruptly splintering formation and swinging into position on the 4 sides of the Benali mansion a kilometer away. With the kind of precision only remote-controlled droids could achieve, all 4 dropped simultaneously to the ground, and from the hatches poured military straight lines of battle droids. Report. But to start, Doriana jerked his attention back to his holo projector. The hooded image of Darth Sidious hovered over the small projection platform, his expression unreadable. Your pardon, Lord Sidious? Yes. Doriana apologized hastily. My attention was distracted. To his relief, Sidious merely smiled thinly. The Nemodians have finally made a move. Of a sort, yes, Doriana said, daring to split his attention between his master's image and the activity going along around the mansion below. The battle droids have been joined on the lawn now by a handful of the hulking D-60 assault droids and a pair of droidicas. Most of them settled into the defensive cordon around the mansion, but 4 of the assault droids were waiting instead just outside the transport nearest the mansion's front door. As he watched, 2 Nemodians emerged from the hatch into the protective square of the assault droids and scuttled across the lawn toward the door. It looks like they decided to take a talk with Lord Benali, he told Sidious. Will talking be of any use to them? But Doriana shrugged as the group vanished inside. Benali certainly can't get the plant up and running any faster, he said. Maybe they want him to act as an interpreter with the Kwanzak. He seems to understand the skin coloration language of theirs. More likely they're seeking a hostage. Possibly, Doriana nodded. That could be useful, providing Roshton is willing to play along. You will make it your business to see that he does, Sidious said bluntly. That goes for that Jedi too. Turles. As well. I don't want either of them making trouble into the Republic task force lives. Doriana blinked. You knew about that? Another thin smile. Did you think you were my only source of information, Doriana? Of course not, my lord, Doriana said hastily. Still, couldn't help but feel a touch of disappointment. He'd rather hope to deliver that particular tidbit of news himself. But information is useful only when someone is in a position to exploit it, Sidious continued, and we cannot allow either the Republic or the Separatist forces to damage Spaarti creations. I understand, my lord, Doriana said. Good, said Sidious. Then carry out your orders. The image vanished. Doriana put the hollow projector away. The droids had finished forming the cordon around the mansion. The assault droids holding down the building's corners and entrances, while the droidicas rolled watchingly around the perimeter. It didn't look like anyone was going to be getting in or out anytime soon. His eyes drifted across the grounds, wondering how Lord Benali's employees were reacting to the sudden invasion. But the only person he couldn't see was a quarter of the way around the mansion to the east. A gardener on his knees beside one of the sculpted bushes. Apparently the more observant workers had reacted by hustling themselves out of sight. The gardener looked up, mopping his forehead with a gloved hand, and Doriana stiffened. That was no gardener. It was Commander Roshton. Hissing a curse under his breath, Doriana headed off towards Roshton, walking as quietly as he could without drawing undue attention from the droids. Darth Sidious's warning echoing through his mind. Roshton, the idiot, was going to ruin everything. No, Lord Pilester Benali said firmly. I'm going to simply sit by and let those monsters take up residence in my plan. And I understand your frustrations, Jafar Torres sued, but I'm sure they're not doing any damage in there. They could have destroyed Spaarti from orbit if that was what they wanted. I know what they want. The same thing Doriana and the Republic want, Benali growled. The point is that the longer this silly dance goes on, the greater the chance someone will eventually get careless. When that happens, it'll be the end of Spaarti creations. But the Republic's going to send help, aren't they? Benali's 12-year-old son, Korf, spoke up from his chair at the other corner of the desk. Probably, Benali told the boy grimly. But I'm starting to think that more soldiers are the last thing we want. Turles frowned. What do you mean? Just what I said, Benali growled. The Republic and Separatists are like a pair of door quicks, fighting over a bone. What does it matter which of them is in charge when the plant gets destroyed? So what do you suggest? Turles asked. Benali's lip compressed briefly. That we get the Separatists out ourselves, now, before Roshton and his clone troopers can regroup to attack. Bribe them, blackmail them, even help them finish their work if they'll promise to get out afterward. You can't be serious, Turles protested, frowning. This was a whisper of warning from the Force. There was a whisper of warning from the Force, a sense of alien minds nearby. Why not? Benali commented. What are you worried about? Roshton's blasterings about treason? That's nothing but a bunch of... He stopped as heavy footsteps suddenly sounded outside the office door. What in the world? He muttered, starting to rise to his feet. With a crash, the door was shoved violently inward, the warped panels slamming to the floor and bouncing another 2 meters across the room. Benali dropped back onto his chair with a curse and his hand darting toward one of the desk drawers. No! Turles snapped, reaching out with the force to lock his arm in place. He was just in time. Half a second later, the monstrous metal shapes of 2 large combat droids strolled into the room. The heavy blasters permanently attached to their forearms lifted and ready. Their heads and weapons swung once around the room as they searched for danger, and then they moved back to flank the doorway in guard positions. Through the opening stepped a pair of brightly dressed Nemodians. The one in the lead wore the blue and purple robes and a black mitre of a unit commander, while the other wore a simpler outfit of red and purple. His headgear was blue, with 4 twisted horns atop it. "Good day, Lord Banali," the commander said in a stilted voice. "I trust we do not intrude." Trollus looked a slight warning at Banali, yet merely a glare in return, but the other brought his hand up, empty, and let it drop onto the desktop. "Of course not," he growled sarcastically. "It's not like I have any actual work to do. What do you want?" "Permit me to introduce myself," the spokesman said, sending glances at first Trollus and then Cough. "I am Tok Assel, commander of the Cartao Expediency Army." He gestured to his companion. "This is Dif Gihad, master creator of the new products." "And what new products are you trying to build in my factory?" Banali asked. Gihad started to speak. "Not so quickly, Lord Banali," the Ashel interrupted. "First, let us have the rest of the introductions." His large and red eyes turned pointedly to Trollus. "I am Koth Banali," Koth spoke up before either of the two men could answer, his voice strong and defiant. "This is my private tutor, Master Jafar. Does this mean there's no school today?" Ashel made a sound like crumpling tin wrap. "It may, young one," he said, eyeing Trollus. "What do you teach, Master Jafar?" "A little of everything," Trollus told him. "Ethics, wisdom, the ways of life." "Ah, a philosopher," Ashel said, giving a dismissive wave of his hand and turning back to Banali. "Now, to business," he gestured to Jihad. "That as we have surmised, we wish to use Spaarti creations to work for us," the master creator said, his voice neat and precise. "But thus far we have been unable to restructure the assembly lines. You will tell me now how to do that." Banali shook his head. "I can't." "Do not speak foolishness," Jihad warned. "You're a director of this facility. You know everything there is to know about it." "Of course I do," Banali agreed. "Including what can and cannot be done. Only the Kwanzak Trillers can manipulate the fluid tooling system." He lifted his eyebrows at Jihad. "I take it they haven't been willing to do so?" "It was the ruins of our vehicles on the South Lawn," Afzal said. We know about the taboo and have moved to correct it, but we do not intend to be demimed in that way again," Jihad added. "So I repeat, you will tell me how we may change the tooling ourselves." "And I repeat, I can't," Banali said. "But there are things I can do to help. I'd like to suggest a deal that you will not block us further." Ashal snapped, flicking his fingers in an odd and possibly obscene gesture. "Not you, not the Republic forces hiding in a tunnel beneath the southern lawn. Oh yes, we know they are there. We have tried twice to dislodge them and have now sealed the plant's exit against them. We also know the other end of the tunnel is somewhere on these grounds. Do not deny it." "I can't do anything about the Republic forces," Banali said, starting to sound angry himself. "What I can do, however, is help you, and you will tell us how to restructure the machines," Ashok insisted, again, even more stridently this time, "or you will regret the consequences." The skin of Banali's face reddened, and even with the masking influence of two alien minds at close range, Trollus could feel Banali's sins harden along with it. Even the invasion of his home and the destruction of his office door had apparently not put Banali off the idea of offering the Nemodians a deal to get them out of his plant. But threats was something else entirely. "And what exactly is that supposed to mean?" he asked, his voice deceptively calm. "It means this." Before Banali could do more than inhale sharply, Exo wrapped his long fingers around Kopp's arm and hauled him out of the chair. "The grub will go with us," Nemodian continued, pulling Koff close in front of him. "When you decide to cooperate, you may join us in the plant." "Let him go," Banali ground out. He was on his feet now, ignoring the blasters suddenly pointed at him. "I've told you already, and do not consider too long, Astro warned, backing to the door with Carl firmly in tow. The boy's eyes, Turles saw, had gone wide with fear. We are patient beings, but we will not be patient forever. Carl threw Turles a whole half-frantic, half-pleading look, but the Jedi had already measured the distances with his eyes, and even with the advantage of surprise, he knew he couldn't take 2 combat droids before at least one of them got off a shot. And that didn't even take into account that other forces the Nemodians might have waiting outside. Which simply meant he would have to try something else. Just a moment, he said finally, standing up. The boy has 2 exams to complete today. I will not permit my schedule to be disrupted. The Nemodians paused in the doorway, gazing at him with those expressionless alien faces. Turles stretched out toward their minds, wondering just how susceptible the species was to Jedi suggestion. He'd seldom used this trick, and never before with a Nemodian. If they didn't buy into his manipulation, he might have to tackle those combat droids up the wall. The boy will come with us, Astro declared at last. If you choose, you may come with him. Thank you, Turles said, bowing in proper Tudor fashion. Throwing a warning glance at Benali, he stepped over to join the Nemodians. But bring many lessons, Astro added as they stepped back into the corridor. They were, Turles noted, 2 more of the big droids waiting for them out there. Just as well he hadn't gone on the attack. Lord Benali is stubborn, even for a human. You may be with us for some time. Don't worry, Turles said, squeezing Corp's shoulder reassuringly. I have everything I'll need. 2 Nemodians and the assault droid escort were still in the mansion when Doriana finally reached Roshton. The commander was bending over the sculpted bust in front of him, his nose carefully turned away from the visitor, powdering away industriously with a set of pruning scissors. What are you doing here? Doriana hissed at him. Tending the plants, my lord, Roshton said in a quivering old voice, snipping off a couple more leaves. Stop it, Roshton, Doriana ground out. It's me. Roshton angled an eye cautiously up at him. Ah, Master Doriana, he said, abandoning both the accent and the phony garden work. You were just in time for the show. What show? Doriana asked. What are you doing? You'll see, Roshton said, shifting his eyes to the mansion and the wing of droids. Ever seen a droidica go bounce? No? Then you've got a treat in store. Roshton pulled the front of his tunic slightly back to reveal a calming kitten behind the flap. Number 7, stand by. Now. And from the direction of the house came the thunder crack of an explosion. Doriana twisted around in time to see one of the droidicas, still in wheel form, soaring over the heads of its startled companions. Behind it, a blackened hole in the ground trailed a strand of smoke. Number 10. Now, Roshton said. There was a second explosion, this one squarely at the feet of one of the assault droids. The big machine lost its balance and toppled backward to land with a sickening thud. Where are they firing from? Doriana demanded, looking around in bewilderment. There were no clone troopers in sight, and precious little cover anywhere nearby for them to be hiding in. Roshton. Later, Roshton said. 5 and 8. Go. 2 more explosions whipped onto the defensive line, each sending a pair of battle doors flying across the neatly trimmed lawn. And here come the soft ones, Roshton added as the brightly colored Nemodian robes appeared in the doorway. This should be fun. Doriana said, squinting across the distance, nearly hidden in the folds of the robes. Hold your fire, Roshton, he repeated urgently. They've got Benali's son with them. Roshton muttered something under his breath. Rotten cowards, he said contemptuously. They can't just... He broke off. A tight smile was suddenly twisting his lips. Well, well. Cowards and fools both. What? Doriana asked, frowning. They've got Carf Benali all right, Roshton gestured. They've also got Jafar Turles. He lifted his eyebrows at Doriana. Like I said, this would be fun. 2 more explosions, the 3rd and 4th by Turles' count, shook the house as Ashel and Jihad hurried down the entry hallway to the mansion's main door. I do not understand, Jihad said nervously as they peered outside. Where are they shooting from? What does it matter? Ashel bit out, gesturing to the droids. Droids! Form a cauldron to the transport. Obediently, the droids abandoned their encirclement positions, scurrying or rolling or lumbering as their capabilities allowed, toward the vehicle squatting a dozen meters away. They were lining up into two rows, their weapons pointed outward, when another explosion caught the transport's right front cover, bouncing the vehicle a meter into the air and leaving a section of armor plating black and twisted. It's impossible, Jihad shouted. How do they do this? Another ask questions later, Ashok growled, pointing towards the Spaarti plant. Look, here is our air support. An impressive air support it was, as Tolis had to admit too. Tolis had to admit 100 stabs had appeared in the sky. And an impressive air support it was too. Trollers had to admit 100 stabs had appeared in the sky, sweeping in from both east and west as they covered on the Benali estate. But the shafts were still out of range. The droids in their cordon had their weapons and sensors aimed outward as they searched for the unseen attackers, and Nemodians were far too preoccupied with their own safety to be watching their prisoners. Time to go to work. Now, Ashel said, ungluing himself from the partial protection of the doorway and sprinting between the rows of droids toward the transport. Grabbing Koff's arm, Jihad started to follow, tugging the boy along behind him. They didn't get far. Reaching forward, Trulis caught the boy's other arm and planted his foot solidly into the ground just outside the mansion's doorway. For a moment, Koff was stretched between them like a pull-war cable, and then Jihad stopped and spun around. What do you? He snarled. He never finished the sentence. In that same brief second, the two combat droids that had been marching along a meter behind them, caught offhand by Trulis' sudden halt, arrived at either side of the Jedi, and with a sudden, smooth motion, Trulis reached beneath his robe, pulled out his lightsaber, and ignited it. Jihad gave a little deep-throated scream, him letting go of Koff's arm as if he'd been burned and scuttling away from him. Trulis gave the boy a quick shove back through the doorway as he slapped the lightsaber across the upper chest of the droid to the left. The brilliant green blade sliced through the thick Acertron armor like it was wrapping plastoid, and the top third of the droid slid off and fell with a crash onto the ground. The rest of the machine, caught in a trick of balance, remained standing solidly upright with a beheaded corpse patiently awaiting further orders. Trulis didn't wait to see whether or not it would fall. The assault droid to his right was already reacting to this unexpected threat, twisting at its hips to try to bring his blaster to bear. Trulis swerved to his right to meet it, swinging his lightsaber around and down across the raised forearms, above the mounted blasters, dropping them to the ground. His second cut took off the droid's legs. Even before the pieces clattered to the ground, he leaped backward through the doorway into the mansion. Go! He ordered the Nemodians, lifting his lightsaber into guard position as if in emphasis. Another nearby explosion blew clouds of dirt into the air. The two aliens didn't need further encouragement. Turning, they sprinted down the line of droids and scampered into the transport. The surviving droids followed, closing up the corridor neatly behind them. A minute later, the transport, joined now by 3 more of the vehicles, was heading east at high speed. Wow, Koff breathed. Trulis turned to see the boy gazing up at him, a stunned expression on his face. You alright? He asked. Mechanically, Koff nodded. I never saw anything like that, he said. Just doing what I was trained for, Trollus said. With one last look around, he closed down his lightsaber. Let's go tell your father you're alright, he said, and after that, he added grimly, you may both want to go to your safe room. This could get nasty. There they go, Roshton commented on the last of the droids piled into the transports. The first vehicle, the one with the Nemodians aboard, had already left the ground and was clawing for a distance, the staff escort forming up around it. They won't be trying that again for a while. Probably not, Dorian agreed, his eyes still on the remains of the D-60s that had again told us maybe half a second to scrap. He'd been around Jedi much of his life, but never before had he actually witnessed one in full combat mode. And for the first time, he began to truly see why Sidious wanted them eliminated. Estate units. Secure, Roshton was saying in his comlink. City force units. Stand by. Stand ready. With an effort, Doriana pulled his attention back to the military situation. What do you mean, stand ready, he asked? And how did you manage these shots? Don't be dense, Roshton chided. There was nothing but that was nothing but a set of strategically placed, remote-controlled landmines. You must not have noticed all the landscaping being done around the ground the past 2 days. I had other things on my mind, Doriana said tautly, watching the fleeing transports instead of taking the straightest route back to Spaarti Creations. They were swinging far to the east. What end? And then he got it. They're avoiding the south lawn, he said. They don't want to risk anything else crashing on it and irritating the Kwanzaa. Exactly what I thought they'd do, Roshton said with a grim satisfaction. Force unit, secure. City unit, fire at will. Abruptly, a dozen blaster bolts sizzled up from the northern edge of the Fowlon city, blowing apart staffs and peeling chunks of armor from the transports. What are you doing? Doriana demanded. You've chased them away. Isn't that enough? No, Roshton said. City unit, take them down. The staffs were returning fire now, and that whole section of sky seemed to be filled with multiple colored blaster fire. Doriana found himself holding his breath as he watched the transports dodging and staggering, trying desperately to reach the safety of the plant. If Roshton's zealousness got the Nemodians killed, or worse, if it panicked them into pulling the droids out of the factory for a counterattack. And then, something else in the sky caught his eye. Just a pair of specks, but as he watched, they grew visibly larger. Roshton, he snapped, fumbling out a compact set of electro binoculars and swatting them on. We've got company, let me see, Roshton ordered, reaching for the instrument. Doriana twisted it away, he pressing his eyes against the lenses. A single glance was enough. It's a pair of C-9979 landing ships, he told Roshton, handling over the electro binoculars. Looks like your little stunt accomplished. Looks like all your little stunt accomplished was to persuade the Separatists to bring in reinforcement. The Nemodian commander's careless choice of a landing spot 2 days earlier had enabled Roshton's clone trooper to slow down their troop deployment long enough for the Republic forces to evacuate the Spaarti Creations complex. With this second wave, the Separatists made no such error. The landing ships put down to the west and northeast of the city, an open territory where no close-in attack would be possible, and immediately began deploying their troops and vehicles. Roshton had barely enough time to order his men to pull back before the MTT transports and AAT battle tanks made their orderly way through the streets of Fowlon City, along the service ways of Triv Spaceport, and even into the mostly uninhabited wooded hills west and north of the Spaarti complex. The AATs took up position at official buildings and strategic road intersections, while the MTTs quickly found places to dump their deadly cargoes of battle droids, super battle droids, assault droids, and droidicas. By late afternoon, every square meter for 15 kilometers around Spaarti Creations was in Separatist hands, with one small exception. One of the C-9979s is here, Roshton said, tapping a spot on the hollow net due west of Fowlon City. Its droids and AATs are accompanying western Fowlon, plus all the territory west and north of the Spaarti complex. The other ones here, he indicated, a point near the Q train of the Quartrine River, where it meandered its way toward the city, and the Triv spaceport to the northeast of it, where they can cover the eastern city and the spaceport. I hear some units have gone a ways to the Quartrine and on to Navwalk City, too, but I don't have independent confirmation of that. Troilus looked over at the Benali. The other's face looked pale, but that could have just been the lighting. With only limited power supplies available here in the depths of the Benali family safe room, and with no desire to attract notice towards occupying the main house upstairs, Benali had elected to shut down everything except the perm lights. The perm lights. So where does that leave us? Troilus asked. Basically stuck in here, Roshton said heavily. My troops are doing what they can to harass the droids, but they don't have nearly enough manpower to put them back to the landing ships. Master Doriana tells me Supreme Chancellor Palpatine has promised help, but that could be as much as several days away. And meanwhile, your clones and the droids tear Fowlon City to shreds, Benali growled. We're keeping the war out of your plant, aren't we? Roshton retorted. Isn't that what you wanted? What I wanted was for the whole accursed war to stay off my world, Benali shot back. I'm afraid those choices aren't always ours to make, Doriana spoke up calmly. It certainly wasn't Commander Roshton's idea to bring the war here, so we just sit here and let them wreck our city. If I were you, I'd focus on the central issue, Roshton said tautly. Namely, once the sun sets, they'll be able to get the Kwanzak to retool the plant. Once that happens, you can wave goodbye to any hope for your city or your world. What do you mean? Cartao asked, huddling a little closer to his father. The Separatists are about to launch a brand new level of line of assault droids, Roshton told him. Once they get it up and running, every hour they spend in there means a stronger droid army on Cartao. If they're not stopped, sooner or later, they'll have enough troops to defeat anything the Republic can spare to throw against them. He looked back at Benali, and at that point, the only way to stop them... No, Benali said flatly. Don't even think about it. You think I want Spaarti destroyed? Roshton asked, his voice icy calm. Those new cloning tanks we were building could conceivably turn the war around in a matter of months. And this is the only place we can fine-tune their production quickly enough to get the most efficient design possible. But at the same time, we can't let this new D-90 assault droid line get started, either. I'm sorry, but we're running low on options. Just a moment, Doriana said, straightening up and pulling a hollow projector from outs. We may have news. He flicked it on, and an image of an Iktosi head appeared over the projection platform, its distinctly shaped horns curving back down toward its shoulders. The words were too faint for Troilus to hear, but suddenly Doriana smiled. Thank you, General, he said, standing up and walking over to Roshton. Commander, General Faye Tills of the Republic Light Cruiser Whipshaw would like a word with you. He took the chair beside Roshton, holding up the hollow projector so that both of them could see and hear. Without waiting for an invitation, Troilus moved over to the seat on Roshton's other side. Doriana flashed him a look, but said nothing. With 10 fully loaded LAATEI gunships at your disposal, General, 'tis saying as Troilus sat down. That's only 400 troops, Roshton pointed out doubtfully. Not going to do much good against 3 C-9979s worth of droids and AATs unless you can knock out the control ship. Thank you for the suggestion, Till said dryly. We had a mind to do just that. The gunships will be dropped in 5 minutes. ETA your position in 30. We'll commence our attack on the control ship in 15. The image vanished. How's that going to work with the Kwanzaa time? Dorian asked. Benali shrugged as he consulted his chrono. Sun sets in about 10 minutes. By the time the gunships arrive, it'll be nearly full dark. So we have a chance of getting the Separatists out before they can retool, Doriana concluded. Excellent. What's the plan for this end? Commander? Basically, to engage the enemy, Roshton said, pulling out his comlink. Between the incoming gunships and my own clone troopers, we should be able to cause a fair amount of chaos out there. With luck, they may distract the Nemodians long enough for us to get in through the tunnel and retake the plant. You can't do that, Benali objected. We'll be as careful as we can, Watson said. That's not what I meant, Benali said. That Nemodian commander, Assel, said they'd sealed the end of the tunnel. Sealed it so that a Jedi with a lightsaber can't get in? Watson shook his head. I doubt that very much. You'll still be risking damage to Spaarti, Doriana pointed out. Why not wait until the control ship has been destroyed? The Nemodians certainly won't put up a fight once their army's out of commission. 2 reasons, Watson said. 1, because I wouldn't put it past Separatists to start wrecking things as soon as they know they've lost. And 2, he grimaced, I should be out there with my men, not skulking around down here. The sooner I can get into action, the better. That's a pretty poor basis for tactical decisions, Doriana warned him. And Lord Benali is right. We don't want any fighting inside the plant. Tell that to the Nemodians, Roshton said shortly. As of 19 minutes from now, that'll be their decision, not mine. Just a minute, Turles said slowly as Roshton lifted his comlink, bits and pieces of an idea starting to roll around in his head. A strange, dangerous idea, but one that might work for all that. What if we could get all the droids to come in outside to fight? And how do you persuade them to do that? Benali growled. Nemodians are cowards. They wouldn't just send their guards marching away, especially not with a possible tunnel attack to guard against, unless they thought the tunnel was secure, Turles pointed out, and thought the factory perimeter wasn't. Benali blinked. You've lost me. Of course, Watson said, sitting up straighter. Like I said, they know a Jedi can probably break through the tunnel. They also know, even from bitter experience, what it's like to face one in battle. So, what are you suggesting, Doriana asked, frowning, that we put Master Turles outside with the clone troopers? Exactly, Watson said. Leading a charge against, say, the plant's east door? They'd have no choice but to throw everything they have at us. Doriana snorted gently. Sounds suicidal. Not for a Jedi, Benali said, his voice and sense suddenly tense with cautious hope as he saw a chance of getting his factory back intact. You can do it, Master Turles. I know you could. You could do it, Master Turles. I know you could. Please, Koff added, gazing pleadingly at Turles. Just a moment, Doriana put in. I'm not at all sure I can authorize an attack like this. An attack of any sort will put the plant at serious risk. It's that, or the plant stays in Separatist hands, Roshton pointed out. Whose side are you on here anyway? Don't be insulting, Doriana said coldly. You want to keep the enemy busy while the whipsaw tries to take out the control ship. Go ahead, but keep away from Spaarti. Trust us, Master Doriana, Roshton said. Or rather, trust in the Jedi. Doriana grimaced. Well, when you put it that way. Alright. Roshton looked at Turles. Master Turles? Let's see first if I can get through the droids upstairs, Turles said, getting to his feet. Let's see if we can get through them. Let's see if we can get through them, Roshton corrected, standing up to join him. Like I said, I need to be with my men. You're both insane, Doriana declared, but if anyone else is going, I might as well. If everyone else is going, I might as well too. Roshton shook his head. Sorry, no offense, but I don't want any bureaucrats getting in the way. None taken, Doriana assured him, but as the Supreme Chancellor's representative here, I not only have the right to come with you, but I'm more or less required to do so. Roshton grimaced. Fine, have it your way. Then, if we're ready. Koth took a breath. No, Trolla said firmly before the boy could speak. You and your father are staying right here. But Koth, Benali said warningly. The boy subsided. All right, Roshton said, clicking on his link. Let's get this off the launch pad. Joanna never did learn how many droids the Nemodians had left inside the Benali mansion. All he knew was that there were 8 of them between the 3 humans and the outside door. Trollus has dealt with all 8 swiftly, efficiently, and amazingly quietly. There were a few others on the patrol outside, strutting around the gathering dusk as if they owned the place. The Jedi dealt with those too. It was over 5 kilometers to the staging area. Roshton and his lieutenant had settled on doing the brief calmly communication. Fortunately, 2 of the clone troopers had managed to sneak a small land speeder through the droid patrols and were waiting for them at the eastern edge of the Benali estate. A short ride with frequent zigzags and occasional pauses under cover, and they were there. The clone trooper lieutenant was waiting when the land speeder pulled up, standing quietly in the concealment of a group of trees, perhaps a kilometer from the blank walls of the Spaarti plant. Welcome, Commander, he greeted Roshton as the newcomers stepped up to him. Glad you can make it. So am I, Roshton said. Situation? I've pulled together 200 troops, the lieutenant said, gesturing around him. Doriana looked around, but wherever the troops were hiding, they were doing a good job. The rest are still in the city, dodging droids house-to-house circuits, the lieutenant continued. At last report, the gunships were still approaching from the south. They should reach missile range in approximately 5 minutes, and laser cannon range 2 minutes after that. The first salvo will be our troops. Signal to attack. What about the control ship? Roshton asked. The lieutenant nodded his head slightly upwards. That attack seems to have already begun. Doriana looked up. It was difficult to tell through the light clouds drifting across the sky, but he thought he could see faint flickers of laser fire. Any idea how it's going? He asked. General Tiz hasn't taken the time to keep us up to date, the lieutenant said, a bit dryly. That's all right, Roshton said. If and when he destroys it, should be easy to figure out. What's the local enemy status? The number 2, C9979, is approximately 3 kilometers to our south, the lieutenant said. Most of our troops have been deployed to the spaceport in eastern Fowlon City, but there are at least 3 AATs. These are probably 200 battle droids standing by on guard duty. 3 kilometers, Juliana said, peering off that direction at the desperately cheery city lights in the distance. Then isn't that a little close? It's extremely close, Roshton agreed, and deliberately so. If you'd ever fought the Nemodians before, you'd know they dearly love overwhelming odds. I'm betting that the chance to catch our group in a crossfire would be too tempting for them to pass up. He turned to Trollus. Any last thoughts or suggestions, Master Trollus? Master Trollus? For a moment, Trollus gazed out toward the wall of the plant, now little more than a vague ship against the darkening sky. Doriana glanced in turn at the outline of Trollus's profile, watching the glint of his white hair in the dim light, wondering what kind of thoughts were going through that Jedi-trained mind. How did Jedi think, he wondered suddenly. He knew something of how they acted and reacted, and as the man who often delivered Palpatine's messages to the Jedi Council, he had long since learned how to use their concerns and priorities to persuade them to do what he wanted. But how exactly did they think? Was it basically the same as normal people? Or was there something about their training that left them more alien than any of the species making up the Republic? In the distance to the south came the faint sound of multiple explosions, as it was joined by the stutter of blaster fire. Trollus seemed to straighten fully up. Nothing comes to mind, Commander, he said, sliding his lightsaber from beneath his robes. Let's do it. He set off towards Spaarti Equations, walking with a swift, firm pace. 3 steps into the trip, he ignited his lightsaber, the green blade blazing then upward like a beacon as he strode off into the darkness. Well, don't just stand there, Lieutenant. Roshton said. Yes, sir, the other said, sounding a bit startled by the Jedi's bold move. All troops, advance. Doriana felt his breath catch in his throat. Suddenly the area around them was swarming with clone troopers, emerging from shadows or piles of leaves or from beneath camouflaged ground covers. They set off behind Taurus, forming into neat ranks as they went. Roshton was saying something. I'm sorry, Doriana said, tearing his eyes away from the silent soldiers. I asked if the Supreme Chancellor's representative could care to join us. Yes, Commander repeated as he slipped on a clone trooper headset. Thank you, but I think I'll stay here, Doriana said, getting his mind back to business. I've already seen your men in action, but I haven't had a chance to absorb General Tin's soldiers. He couldn't see Roshton's expression in the darkness, but there was some masking a cynical edge in his voice. Of course, the commander said. So I'll leave you a guard. That won't be necessary, Doriana said. But I'd like to borrow your other comlink, if I may, so I can keep up with what's happening. Sure, Roshton grunted, putting out his belt comlink. Over there, behind that thick tree, would probably be a good place to observe from. Doriana smiled. It amazed him sometimes how easily people seemed to think they could offend him. Thank you, Commander, he said calmly. I'll expect a full report when you return. They'd made it perhaps halfway to Spaarti Creations when the first response came from the picket line around the plant. Blaster bolts began to sizzle across the distance as the droids opened fire, passing harmlessly between the marching soldiers and bounding almost as harmlessly off their armor. Taurus peered ahead to the wound into the gloom of his lightsaber, deflected away the bolts that came in his direction, using the light of the enemy's own fire to see how they were configuring the battle line. The droids directly between them and the plant's east door were standing fast, while more droids were hurrying from north and south of that position to join them. Looks like this whole section of the picket line is pulling in to face us, Roshton murmured from behind him. Yes, Taurus agreed, looking back over his shoulder. All he could see back there were the lights of the city and spaceport. Any sign of that crossfire yet? 2 AATs and about 50 droids have just headed northeast, Roshton said. We should see them soon. Ah! Taurus turned around. The plant's east door had opened, revealing a new set of droids hurrying through to join the picket line. Here come the reinforcements, Roshton said. I guess we'll be seeing those AATs very soon. And with that, Taurus knew it was time to go. How long can you hold out against them? He asked, deflecting one last bolt and then closing down his lightsaber. Roshton threw him a sideways look, wrapping his free hand around his headset's voice pickup. What do you have in mind? We're assuming they've largely emptied the plant of combat droids. Taurus told him, if I can get inside, I should be able to get the drop on the Nemodians. If they're as cowardly as you say, maybe I can persuade them to surrender even if Tiz isn't able to take out the command ship. How do you expect to get in? Roshton asked. They'll have picket lines at all doors. Leave that to me, Taurus said, nodding to the left. But I have to go before they close off that gap. So again, how long can you hold out? As long as necessary, Roshton said, glancing around as he released his grip on his voice pickup. Lieutenant, looks like this was a small hollow ahead and to the right. We'll deploy in defensive formation there. He looked at Taurus again. Good luck. Taurus nodded and turned to the left, taking a moment to get his bearings. Then, stretching out to the force, he dropped into a crouch and ran. They were capable of incredible bursts of speed when necessary. at least over short distances. Troilus used every bit of that capability, his legs pumping in a blur against the ground as he slipped around on the end of the picket line, now beginning to close to a semicircle around the beleaguered clone troopers. A pair of bat droid stragglers suddenly loomed in front of him in the dark and then collapsed into broken rubble as he used the force to shove them backward. By the time the burst of energy and speed faded and he toddled to a halt, he was standing at the southeast corner of the plant, just clear of the forbidden south lawn, facing a sheer 3-story high wall. He glanced up at the dark slab rising above him. 3 stories was an impossible jump, at least for him. But halfway up the wall, a distance he could reach, was a line of lovered air vents, each about 10 centimeters across. He could only hope Lord Benali's father had built the vents and louvers with the same ruggedness with which he built everything else in Spaarti creations. Getting a good grip on his lightsaber and making sure his hand was safely away from the activation stud, he bent his knees, stretched out to the force, and jumped. He was near the top of his arc when he spotted the nearest vent, dimly lit by the flashes of laser and blaster fire coming from Roshton's position. With a quick flick of his mind, he reached out to the louvers, angling them up into a horizontal position, and as upward momentum slowed to a halt, he slipped his lightsaber hilt between 2 of the louvers. The metal creaked in protest as his full weight came onto the hilt, but to his relief, the louvers held. Stretching out to the force, he pulled down hard against the wedge lightsaber, hauling himself upward again. He made it with 3 centimeters to spare, reaching the edge of the roof with his stretched fingertips and heaving himself the rest of the way up to a sprawl on his belly on the cold permacrete. Swiveling around, he leaned partway over the edge, extracting his lightsaber hilt from the louvers and bending it back and calling it back to his hand. The blaster fire in the east seemed to be intensifying as he slipped silently across the roof toward the nearest skylight. He reached it, rubbed off some of the collected grit from his sleeve, and peered inside. The factory floor below was deserted. He stretched out to the force, trying to track down the agitated alien minds he could sense beneath him. Further to the west, perhaps? Yes, he decided. Somewhere a little ways west of his position. He frowned, trying to visualize the layers of the plant. Of course, cowardly or merely very cautious, the Nemodians would have set up a shop in the production area where they could keep an eye on the tunnel leading to the Benali estate. He set off that direction, keeping a wary eye overhead for wandering staff patrols. But all the ones he could see were a good distance away, either swooping behind him to the east near Roshton's position, or else doing tight circles around the C-9979 landing ship over near the plant's west door. The cacophony from Roshton's position was definitely growing louder. Possibly the droids from the landing ship now close enough to add their strength to the attack. A new sound shrieked through the air, and he turned in time to see a Republic gunship dive toward the ground, sweeping the droid positions with rapid-fire laser fire. It swung upward again, and was cutting around for another pass when it exploded in a brilliant red and yellow fireball. And then he was at the skylight over the Area 4 control station. Again, clearing off a section of the transperistyle, he looked down. There they were, directly below him on the control platform, the 2 Nemodians who had earlier invaded Lord Benali's office, plus a few more in much drabber clothing, all gathered together around a plotting display that had been set up in front of Kwanzak's trillers. The master creator, Jihad, was jabbing something in the display, apparently arguing with Commander Ashal all about it. Milling alertingly around the control platform were half a dozen battle droids, their attention and blasters turned outward. The skylight's fastening catch was at the inside base directly across from Taurus. Reaching out with the force, he undid it and swung the skylight open on its hinges. Taking a deep breath, he dropped through the opening. He landed on the platform directly behind Commander Ashal, his knees bending to absorb the impact. Ashal had time to twitch, and someone else had time to give a startled squeak. Before Turles was upright again, with his arm firmly around Astral's chest and the business end of his lightsaber pressed just as firmly against the side of the Nemodian's head. "Everyone, stay still," he warned, but the droid's reflexes were apparently set on hair trigger. Before Turles could say more or Ashal could say anything at all, they roared toward the platform, their blasters spitting fire toward him. Spitting fire towards him. Turles took a long step away from Ashel and the others, igniting his lightsaber and whipping it against the oncoming blaster bolts. 2 seconds later, all 6 droids lay scattered and smoking, destroyed by their own backscattered fire. Before the stunned Nemodians could react, Turles took another long step back and regained his grip on Ashel's robes. "Let's try that again," he said mildly. "Everyone stay still." "What do you want?" Ashel said, his voice shaking. "I want this to be over," Turles told him. He glanced at the Kranzak's trillers crouching down in front of the control system mud flow, wondering how they were taking all this. But if they were worried, surprised, or even fully aware of what was going on, he couldn't see it. "Contact the command ship and order them to surrender." "Impossible," Ashel said, a cautious gesture toward the ruined droids. "We cannot communicate except through the droids, and you have destroyed them all." "Really?" Turles said. It was almost certainly a lie. But there was an easy way to call the other's bluff. "Fine. Come on. Where do we go?" Jihad asked tumultuously. "It just so happens I know where there are other droids you can use," Turles told him, "and watch it. I doubt you want the kind of trouble I can make for you." Keeping a grip on Astro's robes, he led the way down the platform steps. The Nemodian sealing of the tunnel exit had been achieved by the simple procedure of welding the landing gear of the ramp solidly to the floor, and it took him only a couple of seconds to cut through the weld with his lightsaber. Ashel quivered in his grip as he did so, but said nothing. The footsteps echoed eerily as they headed east through this empty plant. Turles kept alert for a surprise attack, but apparently the Nemodians really had sent all the rest of the droids outside. The battle was still going on as they reached each door and stepped out into the night air. "There are your droids," Turles said, giving Ashel an imperative push toward the light and noise. "Let's go talk to them." "You cannot be serious," the Nemodian protested, clinging back against Turles' grip. "We are not equipped for battle." "Too bad," Turles said, "but if that's the only way to stop them..." He broke off as abruptly the circle of blasters around Roshton's position fell silent. Something in the sky to the left caught his eye, and he looked over at a pair of staffs plummeted to the ground. He craned his head to look up into the night sky. There, almost directly above him, was the fading lights of an exploding gas cloud. General Tiz and the Ripsaw had come through. "I guess we don't need to talk to the droids after all," he commented. He could see movement from Roshton's position now as the clone troopers abandoned their positions, running toward him in the plant now, wide open behind them. "Come on," he added, returning his lightsaber to his belt and nudging the Nemodians toward the approaching troops. The two groups met halfway. "I see you've been busy," Roshton greeted Turles as he trotted to the halt, gesturing his troops to continue toward the plant. "What's it like inside?" "Empty, as far as I could tell," Turles told him. "The tunnel's been unsealed if you want to get the techs back in." "Excellent," Roshton said in grim satisfaction. We'll get the Kwanzaa to undo any retooling they did, then get back to work. I doubt the Nemodians got very far with the retooling, Torlus said. Speaking of which, what should we do with them? Roshton glanced past him toward the plant. Would you mind taking them to Commander Bratt? He's one of the gunships heading over to shut down the number 2 C-9979. No problem, Torlus said. I'll see you later. Roshton nodded and hurried off after his men. Torlus started his own party off in the opposite direction. It is not over yet, Assel warned as they walked. We have not yet been defeated. You just keep thinking that, Torlus said. They reached the side of Roshton's stand now, and he paused for a moment, gazing across the battlefield. The ground was almost literally covered with the wreckage of droids, with the bodies of probably a dozen clone troopers laying among the debris, the armor no longer white. Fires were burning in the remains of a couple of vehicles, one of them the gunship Torlus had seen being destroyed. Standing amidst the general carnage was probably 100 more droids, still upright, yet with an oddly sagging look about them, where the loss of the control ship had left them. He was still gazing at them when, with a sort of collective twitch, they came back to life. For perhaps half a second, the sheer unexpectedness of it froze him to the spot, but for the Nemodians, the half second was all the time they needed. At a balked word from Astro, the Nemodians dropped flat on the ground, and Torlus found himself standing in the middle of a ring of blasters. There was no time for anything fancy. He literally nowhere to go but up. He leaped up and sideways, igniting his lightsaber and slashing behind him as he arced over the revived battle droid army. Trusting in the Force to guide his hand and deflect the shots, he hit the ground running and dodging, heading away from the plant toward the city. A hail of blaster bolts snipping at his robes. Yes, one Jedi, Astro's mocking voice waved after him, more painful than the blaster bolt near misses. Then tell us again of this trouble you can make for us. Torlus didn't answer. Ahead, he could hear the sounds of renewed blaster fire coming from Fowlon City, and from the sense of a startled anguish was rolling over his mind. It was clear that the rest of the Republic forces had been taken as much by surprise as he had, unless he could get to them in time to lead his strength, to lend his strength to theirs. The battle would be lost. He couldn't, and it was. I guess the Separatists have finally learned from their past mistakes, Doriana commented as he, Torlus, and Benali stood on one of the mansion's north-facing balconies. They must have found a way to make a control matrix compact enough that they could bring a backup down to the planet's surface. My guess is that it's probably in one of the landing ships. Not that it really matters. And not that we'll ever know for sure, Benali said bitterly, shivering in the cold night air. They're all dead, then. Dead or scattered, Torlus said silently, and Doriana could hear the pain and self-reproach in the Jedi's voice. Except for the ones Roshton took into Spaarti with him. Benali sighed. And they're as good as dead, aren't they? I can't see it any other way. And Doriana agreed, gazing out toward the Spaarti creations. Above the plant, 100 staffs were circling through the night air like carrion eaters, glinting with the light from a dozen distant fires. On the ground around the plant, invisible from where the 3 men stood, 1,000 combat droids and a dozen battle tanks stood their own silent watch. And between the Benali mansion and the plant, acid smoke still rose from the crater where the Separatist Hellfire droid had emptied both its missile pods into the ground, collapsing the tunnel and cutting off the clone troopers' last avenue of escape. The Separatists, had been nothing if not thorough. The only reason they're still alive is that the Separatists don't want to wreck the plant trying to force them out, he added. But then, they don't have to, do they? Torlus said quietly. By the time General Tiz can return with enough ground troops, you'll likely have starved in there. Yes, Benali said. Ironic, isn't it? Commander Roshton spent all that effort to retake the plant, and he succeeded. And that where he's going to die.